everyone. What I want to do today is to provide you with an overview of the Wireless Wireline Convergence work at the Broadband Forum. At the end of this talk, you should understand why this work is underway, some of the developments and deployment scenarios supported, how to transition your fixed network to 5G, at least a bit of the value of it to the industry, and the timeframes that we're working to. So I got a lot to cover here in a very short time, so let's get started. So how did this come about? Some 4 years ago now, a group of operators approached the Broadband Forum to work with 3GPP to add fixed access to the 5G core. Now these were not small fish, these were major players with both fixed and wireless assets. The goal was to do this in the 3GPP Release 16 timeframe. So we had a joint workshop with 3GPP in Dubrovnik in early 2017, back in the good old days of standards travel. At the workshop, we walked through the ask from the operators, deemed it reasonable and something we could achieve, and established how the Broadband Forum and 3GPP would cooperate to achieve convergence. The first step was to study the issues, which we completed at the end of 2018. Then the next step was to go on to generating normative specifications. Now the Broadband Forum has just published its first set of specs, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about what exactly they cover during the course of this presentation. Now fairly early in the process, we established some project goals based on guiding principles. A key one was to have minimum impacts on the 5G core to ensure that this was a true convergence play and not simply gluing fixed access onto the 5GC with a lot of hacks. The second was a broad toolkit to get from here to there. So a lot of attention was devoted to supporting legacy equipment, auto sensing of when 5G enabled equipment was deployed, etc. And of course, we wanted to maximize the addressable market. What this meant was, and we were warned of this, that given no two operators would have the same starting point, we would need to accommodate existing wholesale models for access, and we'd have a plethora of other considerations. Now, to our benefit, we have a very vocal group of operators pushing their requirements into the work. This has resulted in a number of important decisions as to what was specified. A big one was support for legacy residential gateways. This worked into a number of areas of concern for operators, primarily decoupling 5G rollout from CPE upgrade and addressing bring your own device models where the operator did not necessarily have control over the equipment the subscriber deployed. This led to the specification of a dual mode access gateway function. This is the primary mediation platform between existing fixed access and the 5G core. And the goal of this AGF was to translate whatever it received into 5G, again, to minimize the impact on the core. And we specified the AGF so it could be deployed connected to existing access equipment, PON, DSLAMs, etc. This played into a number of regulatory and wholesale scenarios. But it also meant tightly constrained protocol choices for 5G, enabling the home, as these needed to be able to pass transparently through equipment that the 5G operator may not have control over. So at a 50,000-foot level, we end up with a fairly simple architecture. In essence, we have a mediation function, the AGF that I've already mentioned, and we're in the process of specifying a second, the fixed mobile interworking function. To outline the difference between these, in essence, an AGF does the mediation from layer 2 input, and the FMIF does the mediation function from a layer 3 input. So while an AGF is connected directly to existing access networks, the FMIF can be deployed behind existing BNGs. We're also working on hybrid access support. And again, the operators were very vocal on this one, and both LTE and 5G NR will be supported. The expectation is that convergence will roll out prior to ubiquitous 5G radio coverage. So LTE support into the 5G core was a hugely important use case. Of course, when you come down from 50,000 feet, the details start to leap out at you. This chart is a complete view and is indicative of the scope of the work we've undertaken between the Broadband Forum and 3GPP. This is lifted from TR 470, our architecture overview document. Among other things, you'll find an explanation of the components and their role in making convergence a reality. The components in green are either functions or interfaces that are specified by the Broadband Forum, and the associated specifications are associated with them. And those in red are those that were modified for WWC by 3GPP. And the functions and interfaces named in black did not require modification, but they are a part of the overall architecture. Now, this may look a little bit like a spider farted on it, but it is all the use cases and deployment scenarios rolled into a single diagram. So that's legacy RG support in its various guises, 5G RG support, hybrid access, fixed wireless access, devices using 3GPP procedures in the home, and a variety of deployment scenarios. So we've just published the first set of specifications, what we refer to as phase 1, or just enough convergence to get your feet wet. Included is legacy RG support for the higher running use cases, 5G RG support, either over wireline or fixed wireless access, 5G QoS support. This we see as a fairly big one, as it permits an operator to get to a uniform quality of service model across all networks, with implications for service convergence, charging, etc. Efficiency in packet handling was also a big operator concern, hence the procedures are defined to allow a combined mediation platform, both an AGF or MEF and a 5G user plane function. And this eliminates a fair bit of packet processing from the end-to-end path and addresses the concern of what will happen with higher bandwidths. We also wanted to bring forward the richness of the features defined in the broadband user services that Jason told you about earlier. So we have TR69, 369 support, and we have a series of 5G data model extensions in the TR181 work. And to document this, we've issued a series of specifications for the 5G CPE, CPE management, the AGF, and as well as an overall architecture document to act as our Rosetta Stone. Those documents are now publicly available or about to be publicly available. So I've mentioned a 5G enabled CPE. Just what is it? First, it has a control plane termination. In the mobile world, there's a single authenticated control session from CPE to the network that is used to automate lifecycle management for the services and connectivity offered by the network. This single control session can request a number of user plane sessions for the purposes of QoS, VPN, slicing, isolation of particular service platforms, etc. As I mentioned, it extends the 5G QoS model into the home. It's managed using the Broadband Forum's TR181 data models as they've been extended for 5G. Now for phase 2, we're also specifying trusted access via 5G RG for devices in the home. And we're working on multi-access and extensions to the fixed wireless access support. Multi-access is becoming increasingly interesting to operators as the work setting evolves to work at home. And with COVID, they replace deployment challenges. This allows customer and self-install prior to the truck roll, higher reliability, and gives us a number of other benefits. The other key piece of phase 1 was specifying the access gateway function. As I mentioned, this is the primary mediation platform between the CPE connected to an existing access network and the 5G core. So it supports both legacy and 5G enabled equipment. It auto-senses via backwards compatible procedures what it is connecting to the network and adapts accordingly. This is a key enabler of the migration scenarios, including customer self-install. For legacy devices, it proxies the CPE control channel to interwork legacy IP sessions with the 5G PDU sessions. It adapts 5G QoS abstractions onto the existing wireline traffic contracts. And as mentioned, it can be deployed in an existing and unmodified access network. Some vendors will bundle this functionality into existing BNGs. Now we're just starting the phase 2 work. And again, we've got a dedicated group of operators keeping us on track. The key focus of the phase 2 work is to expand the deployment scenarios and unlock some of the value the 5G core brings to wireline. At the same time, we're going to be adding robustness to the phase 1 work as we gain experience with it. Phase 2 will see 2 new specifications, one for the fixed mobile interworking function that I mentioned earlier to allow 5G access via existing BNGs, and the second is to define control and user plane separation, which will again expand the number of deployment operations an operator could consider. These are working text 457 and 458 respectively. We will add multi-access scenarios to support resilience and bandwidth aggregation with strong policy controls. The operators have indicated they also want more flexibility in what they can do with the legacy equipment that's deployed. So this again, we expect to expand the addressable market. And network exposure will permit more of the 5G capabilities to be exploited by wireline applications. Multicast and business services will extend what can be converged on the 5G system. So here's the project history in one chart, showing the BBF work and how it lines up with the 3GPP release plans. From study to phase 1 to phase 2, and undoubtedly there'll be a phase 3, but it's not on the drawing board yet. As I mentioned, we're just wrapping up phase 1, the documents are publicly available, and we're starting phase 2. This will tentatively run into mid-2021, and we'll see where we go from there. Key thing is, compared to past attempts at fixed mobile convergence, and trust me, I've got the scars, this time around it is far more ambitious and addresses a completely changed world. At this point, everything else is already converged, from the appliances we use in the home, such as tablets and smartphones, to the infrastructure we're deploying in our networks. So not only are there significant drivers for convergence, but the barriers have all been eliminated. So to summarize, this has been primarily driven by operators. There is this pre-qualified customer base. Unlike previous attempts at convergence, this one is comprehensive and reflects much more strongly the state of the industry. The operators have been very vocal about ensuring their needs are met, and we have been delivering accordingly. We've published the first set of specifications, and the journey is ongoing, so if you're at all interested, I would invite you to get involved, and thank you very much for your time. So just very quickly, as I suspect you'll get the document package after the conference, we have some pointers to where you can find this stuff. How do you get involved with it? Quarterly meetings, we have our bi-weekly calls.